Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream, and thank you so much for tuning in for another show. The American president, Donald Trump, is saying that he's going to be very firm with Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a deal inside of the Gaza Strip, and that Benjamin Netanyahu really wants it too. The Israeli Prime Minister is due to visit Washington, meet with the American president, the Secretary of Defense, and other officials in the country. In this live stream, we're going to have a read through all of the latest statements. Is Netanyahu now likely to reach a deal, unlike in previous instances? What is the position of the Palestinian resistance at the moment with the constant demands of Israel to disarm the Palestinian resistance? And what is the alternative for Israel in case these negotiations fail again and they do not reach a deal? And what would be the outcome of this alternative of the state of Israel? We're going to talk all about that alongside the latest also attacks coming from the Gaza Strip, from the south of Gaza, from the Rafah area. I mean, this is supposed to be a parameter, by the way. It's supposed to be a security buffer zone for Israel. Missiles were launched today from Gaza. Do you know where? To a location where Israel just authorized the people to go back to. Imagine that. We're going to talk about that, and also another missile from Yemen landing. This literally happened in the past 15 minutes. Okay. Let's begin with this report here. Donald Trump. Donald Trump is telling the media that he's going to be very firm with Benjamin Netanyahu to end the war with Gaza. According to him, he's gonna be very firm with Netanyahu to end the war during the Israeli visit to the White House next week. But guess what? That's a surprise. Netanyahu wants it too, as well. Trump reiterates his belief that a ceasefire and hostage release deal will be reached shortly. I think we'll have a deal next week, he says. Last week, he predicted that the deal would be reached this week. To be fair, he said 1 to 2 weeks. Okay. Anyway, we get the idea. You know, he's expecting a deal very soon. 1 to 2 weeks. Trump also says Netanyahu's visit set for Monday will be a celebration of the U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran during the 12-day conflict, which ended last week. What a celebration of saving Israel from doomsday. A celebration that Israel still exists. What are you going to be celebrating exactly? Your failed campaign? The fact that Iran still has uranium and they still have ballistic missiles? With the fact that they were just poking Israel slightly? What are you going to celebrate? They're going to be celebrating the existence of Israel, you know, because Israel was about to be wiped off the map completely by Iran up until the United States daddy came to the rescue. They had this theatrical attack against Fordo, doing nothing but holes, with Iran still standing firm. Israel, given time, rearming, getting what? Cargo after cargo from the United States. But Iran too. Iran is also rearming. Is Israel getting a breath? Iran is getting a breath too. It's a two-way thing. Even if they're going to get a ceasefire tomorrow in Gaza, some people say, oh, Israel's going to have to rearm it. They're going to, the Palestinian resistance is going to be preparing as well. Anyway, he's going to be celebrating. Now, he's saying that Netanyahu is going to be serious. Is there a reality behind this? What's the talk about Netanyahu being serious? Is he really serious this time, or is he not? Let's try and understand if Netanyahu is serious or not. Netanyahu has been talking about an opportunity, and many opportunities having come up now to reach a deal and to have, you know, a peace in the Middle East. Many opportunities have opened up to rescue the hostages and defeat Hamas and broad regional possibilities. Now, in relation to the possibilities and the Abraham Accords and all of that, just remember very well, none of that is guaranteed. There are, of course, talks, there are attempts, there are confirmations. How likely are they to reach a peace deal, or are they security understandings? We still don't know a lot about this, because Israel and other Arab states, they had security arrangements from a very long time ago. As a matter of fact, now you can see the people who save Israel are Arab regimes. But listen to what Netanyahu says. Rescue the hostages, that's number one, then defeat Hamas. And we need to understand the terminology. Netanyahu never prioritized releasing the hostages, aka the prisoners of war, to defeating Hamas, or excuse me, eliminating Hamas. That's terminology. Netanyahu used to always say our main aim is to eliminate Hamas and, if possible, return the prisoners of war. This is what he used to say before. And now all of a sudden he's saying rescue, right? Not free, rescue, as in more urgency, right? And then defeat Hamas, because Hamas are, of course, a movement that cannot be eliminated. It's an idea at the end of the day. The concept of resistance altogether, even if Hamas as a movement, by the way, gets dismantled or whatever, never dies. Why? Because there's always oppression. If there's oppression, there's resistance. There's a disease and the antidote. There is the virus and the antivirus. It's very simple. So long as there are problems, there's going to be resistance. So Netanyahu, indeed, in his tone, well, there are certain things that are indicating that the man has some more seriousness about all of this ceasefire. And the fact that he is now saying that the priority is to release the prisoners of war, that's also a development too. Now, the Israeli Broadcasting Authority said something very similar to the positive tones that are coming now in relation to the ceasefire. They said, based on an official who is overseeing these talks, chances of progress are high, and we aim to release as many live hostages as possible. According to that statement, Israel is still viewing this as a case of something temporary. And even if Israel reaches a case of an all-out deal, they would be trying to force a reality similar to the reality of Lebanon. How likely is that to be acceptable by the resistance? Is the resistance going to accept a ceasefire with a huge reduction of the Israeli terrorism inside of the Gaza Strip in return for a lack of an all-out war and an Israeli withdrawal, for example? That's a different story, because the Palestinian resistance now, they are totally resisting any sort of idea that would not include ending the war, Israel withdrawing, and they're not even entertaining the idea of disarming. That's one thing that people are talking about. Even Israeli media are saying that Hamas' stubborn demands in the negotiations. They're still talking about stubbornness in relation to Hamas, and this stubbornness is coming in the form of totally refusing to disarm. According to Mahmoud al-Mirdawi, senior official in Hamas, disarmament is unacceptable. This is resistance. He told a host in Al Jazeera the other day, only when the guarantees are confirmed will we be able to move forward with the details. That is, the agreement include a clear and explicit clause which is not ambiguous, in which the Zionist enemy undertakes to stop this war. In addition, such an agreement should be backed by the mediators and the Americans publicly with a clear text and parallel implementation, not as the enemy wants, which would accept all its demands and leave the basic demands of the Palestinian people. And in relation to disarming, al-Mirdawi said, this is imaginary. We took weapons because the Zionist enemy attacked our land and rights. Only if an independent Palestinian state is established, then the state will decide what to do with the weapons. Until then, any discussion about weapons is a waiver of our rights, and not a single Palestinian will agree to that. This is coming after intense pressure, by the way, and many attempts, not only from Israel and its allies, but also Arab regimes too, trying to push the Palestinian resistance to disarm in so many different ways, shapes, or forms. Have the weapons under EU monitoring, all sorts of talk, handing the weapons to the treacherous Palestinian Authority of the West Bank or to some proxy elements within the Gaza Strip that operate for Israel and other regimes in the region. That is not going to happen, according to al-Mirdawi from Hamas. It's simply not going to happen. There were also statements coming from an official from Hamas. His name is Osama Hamdan. Osama Hamdan made several statements in relation to the war, and he said a few things that are very important. He said that Since 4 weeks, we basically haven't heard a direct statement coming from the United States to condemn the refusal of Netanyahu. Because clearly there's a deal on the table, and the Israeli families of prisoners of war are saying the same thing. There's a deal Netanyahu is refusing to take. They've been saying that for months now. Netanyahu, according to Hamdan, is trying to use his war against Iran to go for early elections. That's another thing that's important here, and why Netanyahu might go to a ceasefire, because he's feeling more confident with this high, and the fact that he manipulated the already highly manipulated Israeli population in relation to Iran, and that the Israelis haven't shown anything different in the past 4 weeks. We are keen, as in Hamas and the resistance movements as well, to stop the aggression against our people. We have very many efforts with the mediators to open the borders and also allow all of the aid in. We have provided a vision that includes the complete ending of the war and an all-out deal. Netanyahu is trying to take more positions from us at the expense of the blood of our people, something very evident. You know, Israel striking beach cafes, right? When people trying to relax slightly, well, they'll strike them, you know, totally out of it. And that the United States, and this is something problematic here, and this will remain a problem. The American administration is not in a position where it can be a genuine mediator. And that's something that has been evident for a very long time. The United States is a participant. It's not even like a supporter, a backer. It's a participant in the genocide. We are keen on stopping the aggression against our people, and the Palestinian people need to have an independent Palestinian state and have their right in having a Palestinian state. So clearly, despite all of these attempts and all of these talks, the Palestinian resistance is still firm in its position to refuse to disarm, to completely end the war, and to have an all-out deal rather than just a temporary deal. It's not going to work with the Palestinian resistance. Then the other option. What is the other option in case this does not work? What will Israel do if there is no deal? Will we see a repeat of the same scenario? What will happen exactly? Well, Israel, according to the Israeli army, is planning for an expansion of the operation in case the negotiations fail and there is no deal between them and the Palestinian resistance. This campaign, according to reports, is going to occupy the whole of the Gaza Strip. This is something that the Israeli army already rejected, by the way. And that shows you clearly how many differences there are inside the establishment. And I'm going to tell you all about the infighting now and killing happening between them. But the army said, we are against implementing martial law inside of the Gaza Strip. Netanyahu is saying if the negotiations fail, we'll occupy the remaining 25% of the Gaza Strip, you know, acting like he already occupies 75%. Although he's present in these areas, absolutely. You can't call that occupation. You're not based there. And you still get your genocide forces wiped, completely wiped off. I mean, the Palestinian resistance is destroying them. Day after day, ambush after ambush, the Palestinian resistance is putting the heads of the child killers in the sands of Gaza. The other day, 2 APCs burnt, everyone inside them burnt Israel to drag them. Every single day, doing more coordination between the PIJ armed wing and the Hamas armed wing against the genocide forces in Khan Yunis and in other parts of the Gaza Strip. What does that tell you? That tells you that the resistance is there and there to stay. Plus, all of this talk about disarming the resistance. Where is the Arab backing for the Palestinian side? Where is the international call to disarm Israel? Where is the call to disarm the IDF? They're the ones committing a genocide. The Palestinians have been the victims for the past 80 years. of this entity of terror and supremacy. Who's talking about disarming Israel? That's the conversation that people should have, not to disarm the victim. Why? So Israel can kill them with more comfort? Why exactly? Do you want to disarm the... And where are the enlightened European countries arming Ukraine against Russia and hailing every grandmother with a Molotov throwing at a Russian tank? Where are they from what's happening inside of the Gaza Strip? Why the hypocrisy and double standards? Saying that, the Palestinian resistance today, they did the following. 2 rockets launched into from the Gaza Strip were intercepted, according to Israel, 2 days after the decision to return residents to their homes. Alarms were activated in Mitzvah, Amios, Yesha, Nir Yitzhak, and Perigan, and the IDF reported that 2 rockets launched from the southern Gaza Strip were intercepted, and there were no casualties, according to Israel. This is, though, extremely significant. Why? Because it's coming at a time where Benjamin Netanyahu is saying that we finished the operation, we're almost done with the operation. As in, Hamas is almost completely done, just a few things left there. And the Palestinian resistance is showing, and by the way, that's not in a way to kind of hurt Israel that much, or anything. That's to send a message of we are here and we are capable, and you will not feel secure so long as our people don't feel secure. That's the message. And that's why they targeted the places of settlers where Israel just allowed them to go back 2 days ago. You don't want to give us safety? You're not going to have safety. You don't want to let the Palestinians live in comfort? We'll do what we can to make your life uncomfortable. They don't have the same means as Israel, but they're doing that. These are the messages that the Palestinian resistance is sending to Israel in relation to the resistance inside of the Gaza Strip and the capabilities to also launch attacks inside of Israeli territories. Because again, and this is extremely significant, Netanyahu has been, one of his aims of the war is to make sure that Gaza never poses a threat again. 2 years almost into the war, they're launching missiles. Launching a missile from a destroyed area isn't something of, ease. No. It's a very complicated issue. You need to make sure the area is safe. You need to have monitoring on the ground, make sure the genocide soldiers are not there. You need to prepare everything and then launch and make sure it's accurate and all of that. All of these things take a lot of effort. Clearly, the Palestinian resistance has the capabilities, and they are showing Netanyahu as a fool to anyone with an ounce of brain. I mean, like all of this talk of Benjamin Netanyahu of having a successful attack against Iran and hurting Iran's capabilities when they launched the most lethal attack in the final day. You see, only an imbecile would buy this propaganda joke, also this garbage mainstream media, either Arab mainstream media, Western mainstream media, all garbage, trying to cover up their shameful positions of supporting a genocide and trying to undermine what Iran does and what the Palestinian resistance does. At the end of the day, Israel is trying to show the Palestinians, oh, it's not worth it to resist. Look what we can do to you. And from a Palestinian perspective, they're saying, we'll sacrifice everything and we will continue to resist you. That is coming not without support from, of course, who? Yemen. Yemen launched just another missile now on the genocide state. The IDF reports that a missile launched from Yemen was intercepted by the Israeli Air Force a short while ago. And they clearly directed it at the central part of occupied Palestine, because the sirens were in Jerusalem, Ben Gurion Airport, Modi'in, Rishon LeZion, and according to Israel, the air defenses had to respond to that threat. So, from a Yemeni perspective, they are still there. They're still there. They're still launching the missiles. And they will continue as they did with the previous round up until the last second. So even if tonight you will hear someone saying a ceasefire has been declared and it will be implemented tomorrow, Yemen will be still striking Israel. And they will tell you, it's in support for the Palestinian negotiator. We want to support them to get a deal. In the meantime, the Zionists are imploding from within. They want to show as if, we're united and together we will win and all of that garbage talk. They are wreaking havoc between each other in the occupied West Bank. Multiple reports of these incidents that happened in the past couple of years. One of them was, let me show you. One of them was this report here. Riots in front of a base. They're saying the IDF defines the situation in Judea and Samaria or the West Bank as tense and very bad. Several suspects have been arrested in recent days, but without evidence to lead to indictments because they're Jews. They may be released with requests for arrest warrants in the background that were blocked due to Katz's order because the government protects Jewish terrorists. Smotrich condemned Ben Gvir, and the police chief calls for severe handling. They're saying they're severely handling basically Jewish terrorists. Why? Because you can be a Jewish terrorist in Israel. It's acceptable. As a matter of fact, in other countries allied with Israel, you can be that, but not anything else. And Ben Gvir is trying to protect them as much as possible and also give them perks. So one of the Israeli police officers who was in charge of the prisons in Israel resigned because Itamar Ben Gvir was looking to, loosen up the conditions of Jewish terrorists inside of Israeli prisons. And I'm saying here, things blatant to a level where these people are actually considered an act of terror. I mean, this is something, very extreme to happen in Israel, exceptional. Then there were more moves coming from these settlers next to Ramallah. Of course, they have settlements all across. So we have this report here in the Israeli Channel 12. Settlers attack IDF soldiers near Ramallah, 6 arrested. The IDF chief of staff is, he's saying, I condemn this heavily and strong condemnation and what have you. That is clearly not changing anything because, there are people in the government who are protecting them. Soldiers were called in to disperse dozens of settlers who had arrived near the village of Malek, and according to the IDF, they were violently attacked. They attacked and strangled one of the commanders, according to the IDF spokesman. The settlers threw stones at them, vandalized security force vehicles, and even tried to run them over. Now imagine these were Arab or Palestinian. They would be sentenced to death without hesitation. Why? Because Israel is a Jewish supremacy. They allow Jews to get away with terror. They allow their country to get away with genocide and infanticide. And even they allow these squatters of the West Bank attack the IDF directly with protection from the government. Can you imagine the state of lawlessness of this country? And then the settlers will only claim there was no violence. Pathological liars. I mean, might be due to the fact that 800,000 of them are Americans, by the way. Huckabee the other day confirmed that there are 700 or 800,000 Americans in Israel. As what exactly? As Jewish settlers. Did you know that? So they're detached, they're coming in a state of lawlessness, they get funding from the state, hardly pay anything. Day-to-day life, everything is covered from charities from the United States, using the American taxpayers' money to support this depravity in Palestine. But in return, they're wreaking havoc internally. And this is something that has been growing, by the way, for a very long time. This isn't the first time that there were attacks. There were also direct confrontations in base inside of the West Bank, and there were battles between the IDF brigades in the past 2 years. Now, there were also more talks in relation to the ceasefire. Qatar yesterday said that Israel is supposed to, confirm its position today, but that was yesterday. However, it's most likely that there's going to be an expected sort of declaration when Benjamin Netanyahu visits the White House. How likely is it going to be? How likely? No one can confirm anything. The experience that we have is you're talking about hyper-pathological liars criminals. And the United States is exactly like Israel in that sense, the same thing. And the final thing that I wanted to talk to you about is this expansion of terror. Israel has been attacking country after country in the past 2 years. Of course, Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iran, aggressions on the borders with Jordan, and there were even confrontations with the Egyptian army. And many countries are warning, this aggression against Iran, and if we let them get away with it, it isn't going to stop just there. And one of the countries that they talk about very much is Egypt. Now, regardless of who controls Egypt, whether you want to call the establishment in Egypt a puppet to the West, non-representative of the people, whatever you want to call it, they have an army. And from an Israeli perspective, they do not want a functioning state army, whether it's a puppet state or a non-puppet state, because they are concerned that something might change tomorrow and we need to have action, take action. The two biggest country, or the biggest country on the borders, is Egypt, and Egypt is always preparing against Israel. There is no imminent war between them, although Israel is warning from an imminent war because of the level of preparation from Egypt. Egypt, from the other hand, is showing no signs that they want to war, but they are taking a lot of actions to show that they are prepared for such a confrontation, whether it's an aerial confrontation, a ground confrontation. They have the ground troops, they have the ground equipment, they have the tanks in the Sinai Peninsula, and in the air, they just purchased the Chinese J-10s. To have a military superiority over Israel, the same ones that Iran is looking to buy very soon. And according to this recent article in the Israeli Ma'arif, they said that the Arab world is warning. This is the next country that Israel wants to dismantle. And they are talking about this report in one of the Arab newspapers, speaking about the potential attack against Egypt. What are they going to do with Egypt, and why Egypt? Because there's been a lot of talk in recent months. As a matter of fact, in the past 2 years about Egypt, the Israeli officials, they warned that Egypt has been a participant in this genocide. Now they're saying that we need to dismantle Egypt and the Egyptian army, even if we take it step by step. So we don't necessarily have to go all out for it. We can take our time, but it needs to happen at some point. Why? Because, well, you have a functioning army, and we can't let that army get away with being there without any sort of, action from us. We can't allow them to get away with being a strong army, even if there is a president that is close to the American establishment, for example, if they have direct relations, or if they have any sort of dealings with the Americans, or even if we have a peace treaty with them. This is another indication, not only that Israel is preparing or is worried about a potential war happening, but the other countries too, with the movements that they are doing to prepare for any future confrontation. But from an Israeli perspective, they have been the side that is talking about this more than the other side. So, for example, you didn't hear a lot of, Egyptians talking about a war with Israel. But what we have been seeing is the Israeli media and senior Israeli figures, whether from the military echelon or from the political establishment, they've been saying more and more that these are the next countries we're going to have to go to. As a matter of fact, one of the senior presenters in Israel the other day said, the next target is Turkey. We're done with Gaza, we're done with Lebanon. Of course, apart from all of the propaganda is they're not even done with Gaza. They're trying to, overinflate stuff. But there's an absolute risk there. Why? Because they have shown that they are indeed able to conduct these actions, whether against Iran or against Syria or against Lebanon. whether it's successful or not, whether it's for the ambitions of a political leader or not. So the risk is there. As a matter of fact, the Arab countries surrounding Israel, they had the opportunity to carry out, based on international law, a preemptive strike against Israel. In international law, if there is a country acting recklessly, expanding militarily, and committing crimes against humanity, any country has the right to carry out a preemptive strike against it. It has the international law backing, but clearly the Arab countries are either delusional to this fact, or they prefer to remain silent, or that they have another strategy of, like, you know, prolonging this as much as possible up until the fire comes towards our direction, rather than us taking a certain position as a preemptive strike, for example. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you in this live stream. As usual, I'll hopefully have a couple of segments for you with clips of the live stream too, to make it easy for those of you who prefer the shorter videos. In the meantime, everyone, thank you so much for joining me for another live stream. Thank you for everyone who participated in the chat. The Virus and Michael McIntyre, thank you for your supers, much appreciated. Stay blessed, everyone. Take care, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.